The point that everybody is missing is that COVID-19 is the pin, right? The problem is the bubble that the pin pricked, because everybody thinks we had a great economy before COVID-19. We didn't. We have a bubble. The real crash. I had assumed that the real crash would have come sooner.
Yeah.
But it's now going to come later. But this is it. I think that COVID-19 is the pin that is really putting a gaping hole in this bubble, which got a lot bigger than I imagined it would when I first wrote Crash Proof. And I warned about the then bubble in the housing market and the financial crisis that would result when it popped. My forecast was that the monetary policy that would be pursued and the fiscal policy in the aftermath of that to try to stimulate the economy out of what I said would be the worst recession since the Great Depression. I believe that that monetary and fiscal policy would cause a dollar crash, and that would ignite massive inflation, and then the economy would collapse. Well, that didn't happen because instead of just attempting to reflate the bubble, they succeeded. And so that bubble really began to leak air in the last part of 2018. In fact, the air started coming out in 2016. But then Donald Trump kind of threw it for a loop by winning. And that really postponed the recession because it created a lot of false optimism. And in that environment, the Fed was finally able to raise rates from 0.25%, which is where it still was when Trump was elected. Remember, before Trump was elected, the Fed had managed just one rate hike. That's all it had, from zero, right? Despite all this talk about how they would normalize rates, they never actually tried to do it until Trump was elected, and then you had all this enthusiasm. And so during that, euphoria, the Fed was able to get rates up to about 2.5. Then all hell broke loose in the fourth quarter of 2018. We had the biggest decline in the stock market since the Great Depression. And that's when the Fed did what I was warning they would do. On pretty much every summit at sea I was at, I said they would have to abort their attempt to normalize interest rates. They could never shrink their balance sheet. If they tried, they would fail. And all of a sudden, the Fed stopped hiking rates. They cut rates 3 times in 2019. They restarted quantitative easing. They stopped quantitative tightening. They started expanding their balance sheet again. So this was already happening before COVID-19 came along. Then COVID-19 happens, and that accelerated the process, right? A much bigger hole in the bubble. And the point that everybody is missing is that COVID-19 is the pin. Right? The problem is the bubble that the pin pricked, because everybody thinks we had a great economy before COVID-19. We didn't. We have a bubble. We had a bubble. And so they think all we have to do is turn the economy back on and everything will go back to being great. Well, we can't go back to the way we were because we can't reflate that bubble. So there is no turning the economy back on because we can't reflate a bubble. So people are wrong if they think that, this is going to be a quick, self-inflicted wound and we're going to heal. It's not. I mean, yes, COVID is making it worse. But the problem is the economy that existed before COVID, and not only is the disease going to make it worse, but the government's cure is far worse than the disease itself, and not just to shutting down the economy. It's to financing the shutdown with budget deficits and printing money. I mean, it'd be one thing if we were using our savings, right, to get us through this storm. But we're not. We don't have any savings. Thanks to the Fed, we're all broke, right? Everybody is living paycheck to paycheck. Everybody is levered up. And so while everybody is sheltering at home and not working, not producing goods, not providing services, the Fed is printing all this money. And in fact, there's a lot of people today that are sitting at home getting bigger checks from the government than they got from their employers. Except when they were working, they were contributing into the economy. Now they contribute nothing, but they're trying to take out by spending the government money. So we are creating an inflationary nightmare, right? All this government, right? This huge increase in government. People are not asking, how are we going to pay for this? The government is spending trillions and trillions more than it was. The government is now actually spending more money from debt than taxation. I just looked at the numbers today. 51.5 cents out of every federal dollar spent has been borrowed. So the national debt is 25.5 trillion and skyrocketing. The Fed's balance sheet is 7 trillion. So we're getting this massive increase in government spending, and no one's getting a tax hike. In fact, people are getting tax cuts. So how are we going to pay for all this government? We're not getting it for free. So it's inflation. It's going to be a destruction in the purchasing power of the dollar. So all the problems I was worried about a decade ago are now much bigger than they were then. And so the inflationary consequence, the real crash, is going to be far bigger now than it would have been had it come sooner.